So I continue with the AI application in higher education, but I examine in this paper a different perspective on the basis of alternative assessment strategies for UK postgraduate students to clarify that for the purpose of the paper which I present now and I presented before, I use the UK because I work in UK, but of course the conclusions can be applied in other institutions, but I think that data for what takes place in different institutions are very important in order my findings to be tailor-made to other institutions, as we all can understand. So this is a paper on alternative assessment strategies, and this is why, because in UK for some postgraduate courses, the problem is that there is no compensation. What does this mean? Is that if students fail during the first and resit attempts, they don't have, it is not offered any third attempt. So these students, either they return back to their countries with absolutely nothing, or they may end up with a diploma, a postgraduate diploma or a postgraduate certificate, because they have not completed the appropriate number of credits, which is important for a master's degree. So I try to cover this gap. This applies also in my course. I'm director of two master's programs, and I try to see how I can cover this gap, how I can address this gap, proposing some alternative assessment strategies which take place in abroad, in the US, where I studied at Harvard Business School, and it was there many years ago, but it seems that the British system is more strict, less flexible. So let's see how the need to innovate, and using now the AI, we can perhaps move to different ways of helping students to succeed, because when the student success rates fell down, returning back, as I mentioned before, to their countries with a postgraduate diploma or a certificate which may not be accredited by their country, but their system. This causes issues for the reputation of the course as well, and for the success of the students, and for our success rates as higher education institution. So the current assessment challenges, which I briefly already presented, regards that there is a rigid framework in UK where postgraduate assessment in UK relies mainly on summative coursework without compensation mechanisms in many postgraduate courses, whereas we do have this mechanism, compensation mechanism, in other graduate courses. There are no second chances, like if students fail, as I mentioned in the initial and resit assessments, they end up with a postgraduate diploma or a certificate if they have less credits instead of a master's degree, which is what the students need and what is acknowledged worldwide as a postgraduate degree. And there is a disproportionate impact because international students, part-time learners, and those who may have learning disabilities and problems struggle most with this summative kind of assessment, and the type of feedback and they receive, in the time they receive this feedback, and the timing they have to apply this feedback in order to improve their performance. The research approach for this study, it is not an empirical study itself. We don't apply this alternative assessment yet. This is what I propose. This is the value of this work. So I provide a systematic literature review, analyzed peer review articles, books, policy reports from the period 2003 till 2023, and I try to do also a comparative analysis comparing UK policies against other universities in other parts of the world, like US, Australia, Scandinavian countries, and the models that they apply regarding assessment. The eligibility criteria are focused mainly on postgraduate assessment type, resubmission policies, and compensatory grading, how we can compensate the students. And also we do a thematic coding, like we synthesize key themes where we focus to develop a comprehensive compensatory framework. And this thematic code includes subject areas such as resubmission, based learning, bonus questions, mechanisms, and portfolio assessment types. So we identified these three themes of interest. The main research question regards which is the compensatory model design which we can apply, and how we can uphold these standards and fairness without violating policies and rules, following the framework which takes place in UK. What kind of lessons we can get from the international higher education sector, and especially from the US reassessment models, which indeed help students and promote creative thinking, collaboration, enhance learning and engagement. And the assessment does not look like a punishment, but as a way students to learn, providing the opportunity to submit this learning outcome that they have won. And alternative strategies, what options exist for students who fail assessment to be helped to succeed in the courses. Which is the impact of current assessment policies? One area regards student success. There is an issue of high stakes assessment which increases the failure rates among vulnerable students, especially students who have language problems, learning problems. They have a different educational background, coming from different countries, joining a British higher education institution here, and they have a different knowledge about the assessment, how assessment works. So when till to adjust, they face the failure probability for completing successfully their degree. There is another issue regarding learning outcomes, where often we see that there is limited feedback opportunities which hinder the deeper learning. The feedback opportunities usually is based on the use of a rubric or some qualitative comments, which might be really limited and is not enough to help students to improve performance. Another issue which regards the institution is that when there is high failure rates, and these high failure rates affects satisfaction scores and of students, this affects also the reputation of the institution and the enrollment, of course, because of the level of difficulty students to complete successfully the assessment. And the latter, which I mentioned, impacts negatively student recruitment. When there is rigid policies, this deter international applicants to join the program. Some alternative assessments which take place in many universities in abroad regards bonus questions. I personally experienced this in Harvard University, which helped a lot. There are students who want to complete with distinction or with merit, or even to pass successfully. So the bonus questions allow students to demonstrate a higher order thinking and earn additional marks for this, and mitigates the assessment anxiety and risk students to fail without having any negative impact on terms of the standards. We keep the standards, we give more opportunities to students to learn and succeed. Another assessment is the rapid resubmission, where students can revise and resubmit coursework within a structured time frame, which is decided institutionally. For example, 5 days after the first submission, the students get feedback, and it's up to them to submit within 5 days after the release of the marks and the comments, resubmitting without being the receipt. So this is a structured time frame and a structured way of students become informed about the process. And this improves the long-term academic performance and the rates, of course, of success. And the other alternative is portfolio-based assessment, which takes place in many universities in abroad, where tracks the progress over time, which allows gradual improvement rather than students to submit once, having all elements, but they can submit separate elements, get feedback for each one, and improve the performance for the next one. But even if they fail, let's say one module may have two pages of assessment, this the receipt could be a portfolio assessment which can connect these two elements, and these elements to have a significant conceptual flow and, as I mentioned, connection for the student. And this aligns for more constructive, the application of the constructive alignment theory, which helps a lot students' performance. Which are the international best practices? In the United States, a big number of universities follow the resubmission-based grading. Also, they follow the structured feedback cycles, where students get immediate feedback from their assignments, and they can have this open window of 7 days to submit using this feedback and reflecting about the feedback, to what extent was helpful for their more in-depth understanding, what were the difficulties. So the instructor gets feedback from the students for the feedback who has provided. And it is, generally speaking, a competency-based education, where students are provided with more than two opportunities to submit their assignment. And this success in this competency-based approach helps the students with, the learning, satisfaction, and the institutional reputation as well, the course reputation, the academics, the modules. In Australia, it takes place the progressive assessment models, where different types of assessment, applying different modules on the basis of the level of difficulty and what fits for every module. Supplementary assessment options, where students may have some freedom of choice as well, and the formative integration, which takes place in almost all universities. In Scandinavian countries, the portfolio-based evaluation is very common, where each portfolio has usually three elements which are interconnected conceptually, and at different time periods, students are asked to submit one element, get feedback, improve for the second, and so on and so forth. So the students do not have this time pressure to submit a long assignment once, but gradually in different periods and get feedback. Continuous assessment, which might be connected with a portfolio assessment. So students have not only one type of assessment, different assessments, which is different rates of weight of assessment. So students not to depend on one type of assessment, but also to have opportunity for a different constructive feedback, and flexible resubmission policies, which help students to move on forward and to succeed depending on the institution. The compensatory resubmission model is what we try to introduce through this study, which is consists of these elements, which I present in my slide. Is the first coursework submission, where students follow the standard approach to submit, to get feedback, and their grades. The instructor provides this feedback in order not to be used just for the receipt, but opens a rapid resubmission window, which is provides the opportunity within 7 days period to the student to integrate the feedback, to reflect upon the feedback, what the student has learned from the feedback that has been provided from the instructor, and to submit again the assignment. It is not an obligation. It is up to the student. If chooses to use this 7-day period of time to do this reflection on the feedback and resubmit. And of course, is the final visit opportunity, which the student, if fails in this 7-day period, integrating the feedback, has the traditional opportunity of visit, and it is the compensatory portfolio, which is another option where it is a reflective portfolio submission, if of course final visit fails, where the student, if for example has 2 pieces of assessment and these 2 pieces of assessment have to be passed, it can be part of one assignment with 2 different elements which the instructor can conceptually connect, so that the student to be able to use the feedback which already received from the first attempt, from the receipt, as a portfolio, instead of having to deal with a failure in the module, failure in one assignment. It is the theoretical foundations regarding the this compensatory resubmission model, the CRM, is based on the constructive alignment, because assessment reflects learning objectives. It is the feedback drives learning improvement, so it strengthens formative assessment, and competency over single attempt performance is gained. So learning is there, it is gained by the students. So we know by the performance of the student that the student met the learning outcomes. Which are the benefits of this CRM approach? Is that improves retention. There is a structure, a resubmission type of opportunities which are provided to students, which enhance student persistence and completion rates. It enhances fairness because there are multiple assessment pathways which reduce disadvantages for vulnerable student groups. As I mentioned, people who have disabilities, learning issues, people who come from different educational background with different culture, knowledge of assessment, how the assessment in British institution takes place. It maintains the standards of the institution because there are clear criteria and structure feedback which preserves academic rigor, and there is increased diversity because there is more flexible assessment which attracts international students and part-time students to join the courses. Which are the implementation challenges? One is the time constraints. Very often we deal with the faculty workload issues, which increases with multiple assessment cycles. And here is the AI, which can contribute, which can develop specific templates, which can help the instructor to minimize the time which can consume for providing the immediate feedback after the first submission. There is a policy alignment issue like institutional regulation, which may require significant revision to accept this type of multiple assessment, including the CRM and the resubmission in the 7 windows, or even the bonus question, which is not still applicable. It's not something which takes place in British institutions. There is another issue of consistency concerns because maintaining grading standards across resubmissions is very important. So we have to keep in mind that whatever is introduced for one specific course, it has to be applied in other courses as well. So consistency is a very important issue, and how different courses can match with this, how it can serve this competency framework approach to all courses being provided. And another issue is resource implications, because it may be required additional administrative support and training on the basis of how assessment can be used, how, in which, for which cases, what exemptions, how the administrators can upload, what can upload as final grade, how can manage the weighting of different types of assessment. In terms of policy recommendations, is that it is important to be adapted a rapid resubmission windows approach, to be implemented structured opportunities for students to revise work based on feedback. This gives really a big opportunity to students to increase their success and to return back their countries, gaining the knowledge, but also having the master's degree instead of not having this compensation, which takes place in many postgraduate courses, to integrate portfolio-based assessment, to include these competency-based portfolios, to demonstrate learning progression over time, to develop the appropriate institutional guidelines and policies, providing feedback for resubmissions which maintain academic integrity and institutional standards, and to pilot and evaluate this approach through surveys, questionnaires, studies, to assess which is the impact of this on student retention, on learning outcomes, and on grading consistency. So it may be required a pilot period of applying this approach. In terms of the future research directions, because as I mentioned, this is not an empirical study, but it's based on a literature review, since these approaches do not yet take place, is that it may be needed longitudinal impact studies to assess the long-term effects of the CRM implementation on postgraduate success rates, and to see this in dashboards of the courses and how it impacts different areas, assessment, feedback, support, curriculum, to do comparative policies analysis to further explore international postgraduate assessment models and their outcomes, and compare with how it was before, how it is with the application of CRM, and see the benefits and negatives of this approach, and to do a kind of scalability research to investigate how the application of portfolio-based assessments with different periods of evaluation of each element can be efficiently implemented at a scale, and which is the impact on student success rates. So this is briefly this paper on examining, as I mentioned, these alternatives which can increase the compensation for postgraduate courses.
Thank you very much for